You're in a conversation with someone who can't grasp what you're saying. Not because they're distracted, not because you're unclear, but because the gap between your mind and theirs is unbridgeable. You try different angles, simpler words, concrete examples. Nothing works. And in that moment, you feel it, that unique, isolating weight of being intellectually alone. Here's what nobody tells you. Intelligence doesn't make life easier. It makes it harder. The smarter you are, the more you see. The more patterns, contradictions, absurdities. And the more you see, the more you suffer. Not because you're broken or depressed, but because you're awake in a world designed for sleep. Arthur Schopenhauer understood this better than anyone. Writing in the 19th century, he identified a brutal truth that modern psychology has only recently begun to validate. Genius and misery are inseparable. Not occasionally linked, not correlated by accident, fundamentally, structurally connected. In the next 24 minutes, you'll discover why the intelligent few inevitably suffer more than the masses. Why your mind, the very thing you might take pride in, guarantees your alienation. And why accepting this truth is the only path to something resembling peace. This isn't about self-pity. This is about understanding the architecture of your suffering so you can stop fighting against it. Think about the last time you were in a crowded place, a shopping mall, an airport, a concert. While everyone around you seemed content, absorbed in the moment, what were you doing? You were analyzing, observing patterns, noticing inefficiencies, seeing through the performance. The average person experiences life on the surface. They accept what they're told. They don't question the contradictions. They don't see the machinery behind social rituals. And this ignorance is their bliss. But you can't turn it off. Every conversation reveals unspoken power dynamics. Every advertisement exposes psychological manipulation. Every tradition shows its arbitrary origins. Your mind is a pattern recognition engine that never rests, and it makes you exhausted. Schopenhauer wrote, "Intellect is invisible to the man who has none." And this creates the first layer of suffering, the awareness that you are operating on a frequency most people cannot perceive. It's not arrogance to acknowledge this, it's observation. When you're having a conversation and you see the logical fallacy coming 3 sentences before it arrives, when you recognize the cognitive bias at work, when you understand the emotional reasoning masquerading as logic, you're not being superior. You're just seeing what's there. But here's the problem. This awareness isolates you because most human connection requires a shared reality. And when your reality is fundamentally different, when you see layers of complexity where others see simplicity, you're alone, even in a crowd. The intelligent person suffers from what we might call perpetual meta-awareness. You're not just experiencing life, you're experiencing your experience of life. You're watching yourself watch yourself. And this recursive self-consciousness creates a distance from immediate pleasure that most people never encounter. While others lose themselves in entertainment, you're analyzing the narrative structure. While others feel patriotic pride, you're dissecting the propaganda mechanisms. While others find comfort in religion, you're tracing its psychological functions. Nothing is simple. Nothing is pure. Nothing is unconsidered. And the curse is this: you can't unknow what you know. You can't unsee the patterns. Once you understand how social status games work, you can't participate in them with the same naive enthusiasm. Once you grasp the fundamental randomness of success, achievement loses its luster. Once you recognize the universal human drives behind seemingly unique behaviors, people become predictable, and predictability breeds contempt. or worse, indifference. Here's what happens when you're significantly more intelligent than the people around you. You become a permanent translator. Every thought must be simplified. Every insight must be watered down. Every conversation requires you to meet others where they are, and where they are is always below you. Schopenhauer observed, "A man of talent will strive for money and reputation, but the spring that moves genius to the production of its works is not as easy to name. Wealth is not needed. Indeed, it is almost a hindrance." The gap creates friction. When you naturally think in complex systems and probabilities, but everyone around you thinks in black and white certainties, you have three options. First, you can be honest and face constant misunderstanding. Second, you can simplify to the point of dishonesty and feel intellectually suffocated. Third, you can withdraw and accept isolation. Most intelligent people cycle through all three, never finding satisfaction in any. Modern psychology calls this the Dunning-Kruger effect. Those with the least competence have the most confidence, while those with the most competence doubt themselves constantly. Schopenhauer explained it long before psychology named it. The ignorant are certain because they don't see the complexity. The intelligent are uncertain because they do. And here's the social nightmare this creates. In any group setting, the loudest voice wins. The most confident person dominates. The one who speaks in absolute terms captures attention. Meanwhile, you, with your nuanced understanding, your awareness of exceptions, your intellectual honesty about uncertainty, you're ignored, dismissed as indecisive, labeled as overthinking. So you watch as the confident ignorant make decisions, lead teams, get promoted, influence others. And you can see the mistakes coming. You can predict the failures. But you're powerless because explaining why requires a level of understanding they don't possess. It's like trying to explain color to someone who sees in grayscale. They have no framework for what you're describing. And their inability to comprehend doesn't make them curious or humble. It makes them dismissive, because the ego protects itself by labeling what it cannot understand as worthless. This is why intelligent people often appear arrogant. It's not that they think they're better. It's that genuine intellectual exchange, the kind where ideas build on ideas, where both parties understand the full context, happens so rarely that when it does, the relief is overwhelming. The problem isn't superiority. The problem is isolation wearing a mask of superiority.
Let's talk about happiness. The normal person's version of happiness is simple. Achieve a goal, feel good, move to the next goal. Get the promotion, buy the house, find the partner. Each accomplishment brings satisfaction. Each milestone feels meaningful. But you can't enjoy it the same way because you understand hedonic adaptation. You know that the promotion will feel normal in 3 months. You know the house will just be where you live. You know the relationship will settle into routine. You can see the ceiling of every pleasure before you even reach it. Schopenhauer wrote, "We seldom think of what we have, but always of what we lack. Therefore, rather than grateful, we are bitter." The intelligent mind is a prediction machine, and when it predicts the inevitable disappointment of every achievement, it steals your capacity for pure joy. Think about it. When was the last time you felt genuinely, unself-consciously happy, without the part of your brain analyzing the happiness, without thinking, this won't last, or this is just dopamine, or I'll adapt to this and want something else soon? The average person lives in the moment. They feel joy without deconstructing it. They experience love without analyzing its biochemical basis. They feel pride without seeing it as a social status signal. They're happy because they're present.
You can't be present. Your mind won't allow it. Every emotion is immediately categorized, explained, contextualized. Every pleasure is instantly compared to past pleasures and found wanting. Every success is measured against an abstract ideal and deemed insufficient. And this is where mainstream advice fails you completely. They say, practice gratitude, or live in the moment, or focus on the positive. But these platitudes assume a mind that can choose what to notice. Your mind doesn't work that way. It sees everything, processes everything, questions everything. Trying to force gratitude when you can see the arbitrary nature of fortune feels like lying to yourself. Here's the brutal truth. Happiness requires a certain degree of ignorance. It requires not seeing the full picture, not understanding the mechanisms, not predicting the inevitable decay. The happiness available to you is fundamentally different from the happiness available to most people, and it's lesser, not because you're defective, but because awareness is a tax on joy.
Now we get to the core of Schopenhauer's philosophy, the concept that explains everything. He divided existence into two forces, the will and the intellect. The will is the blind, driving force of life. It's your hunger, your desire, your ambition, your lust, your fear. It wants without thinking. It craves without reason. It's the engine that keeps you breathing, eating, competing, reproducing. The will doesn't care about truth or meaning or happiness. It just wants. The intellect is your capacity to observe, analyze, understand. It's your consciousness watching the will at work. And here's the problem. For most people, the intellect is weak. It serves the will. It rationalizes what the will wants. It creates justifications for desires that existed before thought. But in the genius, in the truly intelligent person, the intellect becomes strong enough to resist the will, strong enough to see through its tricks, strong enough to question its demands. Schopenhauer wrote, "Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see." The genius sees what the will is doing, sees the futility, sees the endless cycle of wanting and wanting again. And this seeing creates suffering. Think of your brain as two competing systems. System 1 is automatic, emotional, driven by the will. It wants status, pleasure, security, reproduction. System 2 is analytical, logical, driven by the intellect. It questions whether status matters, whether pleasure lasts, whether security is possible, whether reproduction serves any purpose beyond genetic propagation. For most people, System 2 is lazy. It accepts System 1's goals and just figures out how to achieve them. You want money? Here's how to make it. You want a partner? Here's how to attract them. The intellect serves the will without question. But in you, System 2 won't shut up. It keeps asking, why do I want this? What happens after I get it? Is this desire even mine, or is it socially programmed? What's the point of any of this? And these questions, these relentless, undermining questions, they steal your motivation. Because motivation requires belief. It requires a certain blindness to the arbitrary nature of goals. It requires faith that achievement matters, and your intellect won't grant you that faith. So while everyone else is driven by the will, chasing goals, competing for status, fighting for success, you're paralyzed by understanding. You see the game. You see that it's arbitrary, and seeing it makes you unable to play it with the same fervor.
So what do you do? How do you navigate existence when your intelligence has made normal happiness inaccessible? First, stop trying to think your way out of biological drives. You are still a human animal. You still need food, sleep, exercise, social connection. Your intellect can understand that these needs are products of evolution, meaningless in any cosmic sense. Fine, understand it. Then meet the needs anyway, not because they're meaningful, but because defying them creates unnecessary suffering. The error intelligent people make is assuming that seeing through something means you can transcend it. You can't. You still get hungry, even though you know hunger is just ghrelin levels. You still feel lonely, even though you know loneliness is just evolutionary pressure toward group cohesion. Understanding the mechanism doesn't free you from it. Second, find intellectual peers, but be ruthlessly selective. Most people who claim to value intelligence actually value credentialism or verbal fluency or agreeable opinions. True intellectual exchange, where both parties can build complex ideas together, where disagreement leads to refinement rather than defensiveness, is extremely rare. Don't waste energy trying to have deep conversations with people who can't follow. It's not elitist to acknowledge different cognitive capacities. It's just accurate. Save your intellectual energy for the few who can match it. Third, embrace what Schopenhauer called aesthetic contemplation. This is the only escape from the will. When you're fully absorbed in music, art, mathematics, philosophy, genuinely absorbed, not thinking about them, but experiencing them, the will temporarily releases its grip. The wanting stops. The suffering stops. For those moments, you're not a bundle of unfulfilled desires. You're pure consciousness observing beauty or truth. Schopenhauer wrote, "The business of the novelist is not to relate great events, but to make small ones interesting." Find what captures your complete attention. Philosophy, science, art, whatever allows you to forget yourself, and protect that time fiercely. Fourth, lower your expectations of other people. This isn't cynicism, it's accuracy. Most people are not thinking deeply. They're not questioning their assumptions. They're not striving for intellectual honesty. And that's fine. It's normal. Accept it. Stop being disappointed when people behave exactly as predictably as they always have. Fifth, don't confuse understanding with superiority. Yes, you see more. Yes, you think deeper. But suffering more doesn't make you better. Isolation doesn't make you special. Your intelligence is an accident of genetics and environment. It's not a virtue, it's a characteristic, sometimes advantageous, often burdensome. The moment you think your intelligence makes you superior is the moment you become insufferable. And insufferable intelligent people are the worst combination, all the isolation of genius with none of the wisdom.
Accept it. Accept that you're built differently. Accept that the happiness others experience so easily will always be filtered through your awareness. Accept that most conversations will leave you unfulfilled. Accept that your mind is both your greatest asset and your heaviest burden. But here's what acceptance isn't. It's not resignation. It's not giving up on joy. It's not embracing misery as identity. Acceptance is seeing reality clearly and then choosing how to navigate it. You see that you'll never have the simple happiness of the unthinking. Fine, what happiness is available to you? You see that deep connection is rare. Fine, how do you find it or create it? You see that your mind makes life harder. Fine, how do you use that same mind to make life bearable? Schopenhauer understood something crucial. A high degree of intellect tends to make a man unsocial. But he also knew that this unsociability didn't have to mean unhappiness. It could mean something else, a different kind of life. A life built on intellectual pursuit rather than social validation. A life where meaning comes from understanding rather than belonging. The path forward isn't about becoming less intelligent. It's about building a life that accommodates your intelligence instead of fighting against it. This means curating your environment ruthlessly,
protecting your solitude, seeking intellectual challenges that absorb you completely, accepting that small talk will always feel empty, finding the few people who can meet you at your level, and investing deeply in those relationships while letting superficial ones go. It means understanding that you'll oscillate between insight and despair, that some days your ability to see clearly will feel like a gift, and other days it will feel like a curse, and both feelings are valid. It means recognizing that your suffering isn't random, it's structural. It's the inevitable consequence of an intellect strong enough to question the will. And while that doesn't make it easier, it does make it meaningful. You suffer because you see. That's not a flaw, that's clarity. Here's the thing most people won't tell you. You don't escape this, you don't fix it, you don't overcome it, you integrate it. You build a life where your intelligence serves you instead of torturing you, where your awareness creates depth instead of just distance, where your solitude feels like sovereignty instead of exile.
So here we are, the final truth about genius and misery. Schopenhauer wrote, "The two foes of human happiness are pain and boredom." And the intelligent person is uniquely positioned to experience both simultaneously. The pain of awareness, the boredom of seeing through everything. You were built to understand, not to be happy, not to fit in, not to find easy comfort in shared delusions, to understand. And understanding is lonely. But loneliness isn't the same as meaninglessness. The fact that your path is harder doesn't make it less valid. The fact that you suffer more doesn't make you a failure. It makes you awake. Most people sleepwalk through life. They accept what they're told. They want what they're programmed to want. They never question the fundamental arbitrariness of their existence. And in that sleep, they find a kind of peace. You can't sleep. Your mind won't let you. Every answer leads to another question. Every certainty reveals itself as assumption. Every comfort exposes itself as illusion. And yes, this makes life harder, but it also makes it real. The choice isn't between happiness and misery. It's between comfortable ignorance and uncomfortable truth. You've already made your choice. You chose truth the moment your mind became strong enough to demand it. Now you just need to stop punishing yourself for that choice. Stop comparing your complex reality to their simple one. Stop expecting the rewards designed for a game you can't play. Stop trying to force yourself into a mold that was never made for your shape. Accept the weight of your intelligence. Accept the isolation it brings. Accept that your life will be different, harder, lonelier. Accept it, not with resignation, but with dignity. Because here's what Schopenhauer ultimately understood. The genius suffers more, yes, but the genius also experiences more. Deeper beauty, richer understanding, more profound moments of clarity. The capacity for suffering and the capacity for insight are the same capacity. You can't have one without the other. And if you had to choose, if you could actually choose, would you trade your ability to see for the ability to be content in blindness? You already know the answer.
If this resonated with you, if this made sense in a way that feels both terrible and liberating, write in the comments, "It made sense to me." Let's see how many of us are out here, aware, suffering, and still choosing truth over comfort. Subscribe if you want more brutal honesty about the human condition. These aren't easy truths, but they're yours. Your intelligence is a burden, but it's also the only tool you have for carrying that burden with dignity. Use it wisely.